Hi again, everyone. Welcome to Branco Broadcast. I'm Bob Branco. Tonight we have with us David McCullough. I think I'm pronouncing it right. At least that's what Jaws says. David McCullough.
It's perfect.
From New Orleans. He represents a company called Spark Therapeutic.
Yes.
And we're going to have David give his presentation about what he does and what they do. And then, David, you will take questions from our participants. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bob. And very much a pleasure to be on this call, so thank you for having me. I thought I would briefly just talk about, kind of who Spark is. It's a strange name for a company, quite frankly, so that decision was made before my time. But talk a little bit about what Spark is, who we are, and then talk a little bit about gene therapy and some of the things that are happening in that space. And then talk about some of the initiatives that we're offering, some of the education that we're trying to do in the medical community around low vision and no vision. And then also talk about, some of the resources that we have available. So who is Spark? Spark is, like I said, a gene therapy-focused company. We have 3 disease states that we're really focused on. One is inherited retinal diseases, which is obviously part of the reason that I'm here today. And then also we have a focus in liver-mediated diseases, so things like hemophilia, and then also neurodegenerative diseases such as Batten's disease and CNS disorders. So let me turn the page here. Spark's story is interesting. We're based in Philadelphia. We're definitely an East Coast company, and our founders are all scientists. So the gene therapy vector, if you will, has been in research for over 20 years, and it really comes out of the Children's Hospital Philadelphia, so that out of CHOP. And the scientists that were involved at the beginning are now actually part of Spark Therapeutics. And so Spark was formed in 2013. So that was, 4 years ago now. It goes by quick. So we're a heavily science-focused company that is now starting to switch to the commercial side of things. And, with that, and I always say that my job is at the company and the people that I work for and my counterparts is to always make sure that we think of the patient. So we're often the ones in the meeting saying, have we thought about how that would impact the patient? Have we, and sometimes people get tired of hearing that, but we continue to be the one that does that. But at our core, our mission is about delivering and developing treatments that were unimaginable at a time before, right? So the idea of gene therapy seems like Star Trek almost and seems so far in the future. But if you really look at what's happening now in the medical community, we're advancing by leaps and bounds. And we're not the only company. There are a number of companies, a lot of them in the Massachusetts area where you are, Bob. So like I said, at our core, our values, we're about the patient. We're about breaking barriers, and we're about a commitment to collaborate, and not only in the medical community, but with groups such as this, right? This is why it's such an honor for us to be here, because we want to continue to collaborate and try to deliver to the community on unmet needs, if you will. So let's talk about gene therapy a little bit. Gene therapy can be a confusing topic, and I have to preface this by saying I am not a scientist. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person that really focuses kind of on the insurance and advocacy world. So just take some of the things I say with a grain, and know that that are really high level, but they're really smart people working on this stuff. So in the world of gene therapy right now, almost all of the focus is based on orphan diseases. So what do I say? What do I mean by an orphan disease? An orphan disease is, or oftentimes is called a rare disease. And by definition, it's any population based on 200,000 patients or less. So if you hear that term orphan drug, orphan disease, rare disease, that's what that number is based on. And what the FDA does is they expedite review of those of those products, especially where pediatrics are concerned. So, what the FDA and the government has recognized, and also the pharmaceutical industry, is that there are a number of unmet needs in the population of rare diseases where patients don't have anywhere to go. And so now they expedite these reviews so that there are alternative treatments available. So gene therapy really began, or the idea of it began in 1972. So someone really smart had this idea that what if we found a mutation in a gene and actually fixed it? And then so began the timeline. And then in 1990 were the first actual enrolled persons in a clinical trial around gene therapy. And then here we are in 2017, and the FDA has a product under review. So hopefully we'll know more about that soon. And I think what you'll see is a number of new therapies coming to market, or at least going to the FDA for review. So there are various approaches to treating genetic disease. There's kind of three basic concepts. There's an introduction, there's an insert, and then there's an activating. So what do I mean by that? When I say introduce, I mean introducing a new gene into the body to help fight the disease. So whatever that disease may be, introducing a gene that has some type of effect on that disease, and then compensating for it and or correcting it, right? So by inserting, you take a healthy copy of the mutated gene that causes disease and then insert that into the site of care, if you will. And these are being investigated to determine whether they can help the body compensate for a disease-causing copy of a gene and then potentially alter the effect of the disease. And then finally, there's the inactivate, or the knockout. And when we're talking about gene therapies being investigated in this sort of inactive knockout phrase, if you will, is can they help the body compensate for a disease-causing copy of a gene and potentially alter the effect of the disease? I think we've maybe heard some about this in the community. We hear talk about CRISPR technologies and so forth. So my instinct tells me that that's really relayed around this inactivating. So what is our approach to gene therapy? What we do is we use a vector, and it's called a adeno-associated viral vector, and that is what carries a manufactured functional gene. And in the cause of like a retinal disorder, you would inject that. In the case of what we're talking about is retinal pigmentosa, you would inject that into the retinal pigmentosa, and that would include copies of the functioning gene. And then the hope is that functioning gene would take over. Bob, do you want me to stop right there? Because that can be a little complicated, and see if there's any questions around that.
Oh, well, why don't, where we have just several people on the line, why don't we just take questions from the floor if there are any right now? If not, you can continue.
Well, I had a quick question, I guess, if I can ask it now.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Do you know if, well, actually two very quick questions. Do you know if congenital glaucoma is considered an orphan disease? Because I know you said you weren't a doctor, but.
Right. I don't know the answer to that. My gut tells me no, but I do not know for that. I apologize.
That's okay. And what about like risks and side effects? I mean, I'm sure it sounds wonderful. I mean, I would go for it if I had a chance to, cure a disease. But have they looked at like potential side effects and stuff?
Yeah, so I know with any clinical trial that is regulated by the FDA, that is a big part of what's being monitored, right? Our risk, side effects, and kind of the ratio of benefit versus risk. So the answer to that is yes, it's being studied. I don't have the answer as to what that is. In all fairness, I should have probably started the conversation today with, we have an investigational product with the FDA, but I'm not at a place right now where we can get into the details of that product, so I don't have any information in regard to that specifically. And we'll talk more in a little bit about the importance of genetic testing and being identified and just the clinical trials that are available out there. So the short answer to your question is yes, it's studied, but it's basically going to be specific to whatever product that is or therapy.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Any
I know it
other
can
questions?
be a bit vague. Sorry, Bob, I was going to say, I know it could be a bit vague, and some of it is on purpose, quite frankly, just because we are in a regulatory process.
Okay, unless there are any other questions, David, you can continue. Otherwise, we can take questions.
Okay, no, perfect. So let's talk about some of the initiatives that we have. So we have what you would call a patient services team. So I'm part of that team. And so we have kind of 4 buckets or pillars, if you will, on what we focus on. One is improving disease education and awareness, which is a little bit of obviously what I'm doing today. The second is helping patients and families get access to therapy. So in a post-approval world, if we were to have a product, one of the things I would do in my role is once a treatment decision has been made by both yourself and your physician, I would help you kind of navigate the landscape of healthcare, right? Insurance, what that looks like. Do you have appropriate healthcare? Are there choices that can be made and out-of-pocket cost and all that type of stuff? And I would tell you that in most pharmaceutical companies now that some type of that resource is available. So that's something to always ask for if you need help. And then obviously what we're doing today, collaborating with patient advocates around the world, that's a big part of what we do. And then also working with rare disease advocacy groups, right, to connect patients to support services. What we continue to tell patients and people, quite frankly, no matter what you may be dealing with, just know now that there are a number of nonprofit and 501c3 organizations that offer assistance across the board, whether that be help for premium assistance to get better insurance or help provide types of services. There are funds and dollars out there, and it just takes a little bit of research on the internet to kind of track that down. So I would encourage anyone and everyone to do that. One of the big things that we offer, and I'm really proud of it, is a website, and it's called asharedvision.com, and that's ASHARED, vision, VISION.com. And, you know, we offer a lot of resources on that website. There are people on there that tell their stories of what their journey has been like, whether that be dealing with low vision or no vision. People like Janet Lebrec, who was on, you know, President Obama's Commissioner of Rehab Services and Administration, or whether it might be the story of 2 moms that share a story about how they're coping with trying to help their teenagers adjust in life, you know, going from low-sighted to no sight. And then there's a great story by a lady named Stephanie, and she talks about her journey as a carrier. So not having the gene mutation herself, but her daughter having that mutation, and then what that's been like for her. And so it's just a great website. There's great resources on there, and a great way to really hopefully connect people in the community. And on that, we also have links to, you know, various organizations that might be a benefit, and we also have a link to clinicaltrials.gov, which I'm going to talk about in just a second on why that's important. So one of the things that we recognized early on as being a gene therapy company is that genetic testing is not always readily available. Oftentimes, insurance companies will deny because even if in their minds, I should say, if they see that you get a determination of a positive genetic variant, they say, so what? Because there's no treatment. So that, you know, insurance companies are looking for cause and effect, if you will. So a lot of times we know that they'll just deny things. So what we offer, it's not the full panel. I wish it was, but it's a 31 gene panel, and it's based on mutations that have been found to cause certain early onset ROD-mediated inherited retinal diseases. So that would be things like retinal pigmentosa, Leber congenital, or LCA, and or some types of choroideremias. So this is a purely free program. You would just go to your healthcare professional. I can give you my phone number if you need to talk through it. You go through your healthcare professional. They order a testing kit, and it's either a saliva. You have to fill up a little vial with saliva, which is kind of gross and not pleasant, and or a blood draw. And then that test is sent off. It generally takes about 4 to 6 weeks. And with that also comes an appointment via phone with a genetic counselor. So that's a big part of it, because quite frankly, most physicians are not equipped to have a detailed conversation around results of genetic test. So we partner with our contract with a genetic counselor, and she is actually a fantastic, really smart person who will go through your full pedigree. We'll talk about family history, and then is more in touch with what's going on in the ophthalmology community in regard to clinical trials. I think what's important to know outside of IRD, but it just in all of medicine, if you will, in the United States, there are 2,300 ongoing clinical trials in gene therapy and some type of genetic therapy replacement. So this is without a doubt being looked at as the next forefront of medicine. So like I said, I'm here to discuss that in detail with anyone that wants to talk about it. I'm glad to give my phone number. If anyone has questions at the end, I can help you facilitate that. The other thing that we're trying to do is educate the community on what's happening. So what do I mean by that? So we talk a lot with retinal specialists, and we try to inform them about what's changing in healthcare in regards to services for low vision and no vision patients. And then we offer we call it a virtual reality experience. And I preface this by saying it can in no way, shape, or form do justice to what somebody may be coping with. But with that being said, we tried to show doctors through this virtual reality experience what it could be to live with an inherited retinal disorder. And so there's a simulation of a college student walking into a classroom, and the teacher is calling on that student, and the student doesn't realize they're being called on, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, this hand just kind of comes in front of the student's face and startles them, and then the person next to him is saying, "Hey, the teacher's calling you." And then in the next frame, that student walks out of the classroom and goes outside, and it's dark, and there's an adaptation that happens with the bright lights of the street lights and the kind of the blinding of that street light, and then a person on a mountain bike comes flying by. My point in telling you all of this is just to let you guys know that we are trying our best to educate the retinal specialty community about some of the things that are going on and how it's important to have an informed, intelligent, emotionally responsible conversation with patients, especially if they're early on in diagnosis. And so we want to try to show our commitment to that and try to educate that community. Hope that makes sense. And then finally, I'll just say one of the last things we've done. We've partnered with GDB San Rafael, California campus, and we are supporting a guide dog, and his name is Spark. So we're hoping that Spark will graduate. So finally, in regard to resources, we talked about a shared vision. We have that website available. Just know that you have an advocacy team and a patient services team that are here to support in any way possible that we can. And we are focused in obviously inherited retinal disorders. I would tell you too that if you know that there are companies that are involved in studies or research around what you may be dealing with, they have advisory boards, and it's advisory boards that, with an advisory board, it's patients that are speaking about what it means to live with whatever they may be living with. And it's that information that informs what happens in medicine, and it's important. So if you have those opportunities to do that, please do. Spark has used a number of advisory boards. We do not have any that we're enrolling right now. But if that changes, we'll definitely let everybody know. So I think that's really all I have. So I would love to answer any questions or talk about anything that maybe I missed or you want to know more about.
You mentioned clinicaltrials.gov.
Yes.
Now, is that for just specifically for what you're doing, or is that like everything, all kinds of trials?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's everything. And so if you have an opportunity to get genetic testing, if you have an inherited retinal disorder, right, or if you have an inherited disorder, and you're able to get a genetic test done and you see that there is a genetic mutation, if you will, that information will allow you to find clinical trials on clinicaltrials.gov. It's a great way to connect the dots and see if there's something happening in the community that maybe you could be part of.
Right. Well, that might answer my questions because some of my doctors are like, well, I know I had congenital cataracts, but the glaucoma is, some of them are saying it's secondary because of the surgeries. Another doctor said it was genetic, so I don't really know. But I know the cataracts were congenital.
And, so we're offering the 31 gene panel. I just found out the other day that FFB now is offering a full panel. The full one, I believe it's 281 genes. Mm-hmm. So that might be something worth pursuing. I think you go through my Retina Tracker at ffb.org. That's Foundation Fighting Blindness, I should say. Sorry. So ffb.org.
Now, do they test for other? Would they test for like congenital glaucoma and cataracts and stuff like that, or do you know what?
I think so, but I just don't want to misspeak. So I definitely would check into it because I think that they're doing a full genetic panel. I just don't know everything that it includes.
Right. Thanks.
Sure.
Is that the Foundation Fighting Blindness over in Dallas?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is that the Foundation Fighting Blindness over in Dallas?
It's national. It's nationwide. Yes, they're all rolling it out. Yes.
Okay.
So there are chapters throughout the country, but yes, Dallas is one of them.
And they do the full. You said 216G or something like that.
Yeah, 200. There are 281 genes associated with the eye, as far as I know, and so I think that's what it's based on. So you would go to either ffb.org, and I think they have a sign-up on there for My Retina Tracker.
My Retina.
And then it would have more information as to whether it would be appropriate for you or not.
This is Alice, and I'm in Milwaukee. I have a question for you. I do have an inherited retinal disease.
Okay.
Different specialists in the United States, and of course this has been many years ago because I'm a senior citizen now, but when I was young, of course, I found this information out, and my parents did, that because all four of my grandparents came from the same Levone Valley in northern Italy, that was, I was told, a pocket of the world that is most prevalent of people having macular degeneration with juvenile onset. And while so many people just associate macular degeneration with age-related maculopathy, the situation for some of us is that it has the onset from a very young age, and mine was detected around the time I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And so and one of my cousins has the same condition, but hers has never developed to the extent that mine has. She's legally blind, but I have no usable vision. But other than my cousin, of course, I've never met anyone in my many dealings throughout my years with people who are blind and visually impaired. I've never met anyone else who received that diagnosis that it's because of all four of one's grandparents being from
Right.
the same area in Italy. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, but I do know that there are pockets of, they're called founder communities. So you think of it with Amish and Mennonite populations, not Switzerland, Scandinavian countries, the Netherlands. There are founder communities where there are higher prevalence of genetic diseases, if you will, or genetic mutations that cause disease. And I think it's important. I mean, you know so much about your history, which is fantastic. A lot of people don't. And I think it's really important. From what I can gather, I think it's important to understand that.
It's Cleora again. Do you look any into nutrition as having an effect on these conditions?
Not that I'm aware of. But again, I'm not a clinician. I just play one on TV. So I wouldn't have that information. I'm sorry.
If you develop some kind of treatment, would Spark then be the one to administer that, or do you turn that over then to some other organization or doctor to do the treatment?
Yeah, so Spark is basically a pharmaceutical or biotech company. So we would manufacture the product, and then that would be administered at a treatment center. It would be administered by a physician.
Anybody else? Lauren, do you have any questions? Anybody else?
No, I'm here, Lauren. I had to unmute. I don't really have any questions. I just find it very interesting, very fascinating, and I hope that Spark makes it as a guide dog.
Yeah.
Me too.
I think you mentioned something about. Did you mention something about retinitis pigmentosa? Is there are they working on a gene therapy for that, or?
So there's an investigational product with the FDA for RPE65. So that's the one that's that's the closest right now. Have you?
Does the 65 mean the gene that's affected, or what does the 65 mean?
Yes, the RPE65 is the actual gene that's affected. Yes. And you would find that out through a genetic test.
All I know is that, well, the Foundation Fighting Blindness several years ago, they took a blood test for something, and they kept that, and they say they can't identify my gene.
Okay. And that very well could be.
Not one of the more common, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, every day there are new variances identified. So, a year ago that wasn't 281 gene panel. It was, whatever the number is. So it changes every day. So what I would encourage you is every few years, if you have the opportunity, get retested. And just know that every time a gene's identified, it's added to that list.
Now, is insurance going to pay for the testing, though, or how does that work to get the test? It must be expensive.
Yeah, typically they won't. That's why, we're offering the free panel. We have that. It's a smaller panel.
Yeah.
And then FFB is offering that free genetic testing. So I think they just got big funding is the way I understand it.
Okay. Yeah, because those tests probably are expensive if you have to pay for them, I would assume.
They are. They're very expensive, yeah. And they get cheaper, a little bit cheaper every year, as they become more normal. But absolutely, and to your point, insurance companies aren't going to reimburse for this. Unless
we have a check-in. I saw a new check-in after David started. So if you want to ask him a question, go right ahead. Okay, well, I don't know if there are any further questions or if David wants to add. David, is there a website that you could give to the people? They can go online and check it out, check Spark out. Could you give that out, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. I forgot that part. So www.spark, SPARK, T as in Tom, X as in X-ray, .com.
And you were going to give us a phone number also.
Well, I'll leave my number with Bob, and Bob has my phone number. If you need help with the genetic testing part of it, if you're okay with that, Bob, you can just give my number out.
You could, David. It's okay. You can give it out.
Okay. Okay, sure. Okay, so it's area code 972-922-3604. And that's my cell phone. And then there are two other websites. So the other one for the genetic testing and to answer any questions you may have is www.yourIRD.com. So ID your IRD. Identify your inherited retinal disorder. That's what it stands for. And then I think I gave the other one out. It's asharedvision.com. Yep. Don't forget the A at the beginning. This will take you to a weird website. I'm not responsible for that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, David. I don't think anybody has any further questions to ask. So,
okay.
It was a great presentation, and your organization's doing great things in advancement, and we hope it continues. And, with today's technology, anything is possible. So we hope for the best and continued success.
Okay. Well, and thank you for having me. And I'm here if anything else comes up, so please let me know.
Certainly. Dave McCullough.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Thank you, David.